Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we're going to talk about the Imperial Guard. And we're going to talk about Imperial Guard for Astra Militarum, whatever. I'm going to stop pushing that, by the way. If you want to call them Astra Militarum, go for it. Knock yourself out. I'm sticking with Imperial Guard mostly because it's what I remember and know, and I will inevitably end up calling the Astra Guard or the Imperial Militarum or something, so I'll just stick with the one. But I'm going to stop being that person who's like, I think you mean Imperial Guard. Who cares? Who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. So, Imperial Guard. We're going to talk about them for two reasons. Firstly, is having quite a few months ago now done the video about which Xenos army should I start. I've decided to ignore everybody. I've mentioned this before and go for Imperial Guard instead. So I was like, no Imperium, not interested in Imperium anymore, not doing Chaos, but what are the Xenos races? Talk to me about Xenos races. And there were some good arguments for Orcs, for Eldar, Dark Eldar, a mix of the two, going a bit Yunari. Even Tau, some people recommended Tau. And in response to that, I am going to do Imperial Guard instead. Now, this may seem like a bizarre decision, and in the context of that, it is. I can't really explain it, apart from what I'm about to tell you. And the other reason is, I'm working on something. That was a very long and disjointed introduction, but it's fine. We'll just get into it. So, firstly, Imperial Guard Army. My actual opinion of Imperial Guard has changed drastically in the last couple of months, and it's a various combination of things, and it's kind of caused me to look at the hobby and look at the armies that I've played and the way I've constructed my forces with I wouldn't say a more critical eye, it's just sort of one of those things where you kind of have a moment of self-reflection. You're like, okay, why do I like doing stuff that way? I came to the realisation that all of my armies have been formed in basically the same way. I haven't kind of looked at the rank and file infantry, I haven't looked at the overall stuff. It's much been a case of, can I create a meaningful and interesting character to lead this force? Yes. Okay. Do I like the look of this army? Yes. Do I think I like the way they'll play? Yeah. Okay. That's how we'll do it. Now, when I was younger, it was a bit easier because I had more. I know it sounds weird. You're supposed to have more disposable income when you are an adult, but I have a child and a second one on the way, so there's no such thing as money anymore. But it was very much a case of build up an army, maybe sell it to then construct a different army, and I always built them the same way, which was main guy. He is the leader of the army. He usually came with a shed load of upgrades. And then there'd be a couple of sort of minor characters, and then infantry. And it was a very RPG approach to take, I suppose. It's kind of, I guess it was a very Dragon Age way of doing things before Dragon Age was actually a thing. Having that main character that is yours, and then a sort of cast of supporting characters around it. That was always how I'd constructed stuff. From my Chaos army to Necrons, Orcs, Iron Warriors. I mean, undoubtedly the main sort of focus of my Iron Warriors army was the Demon Prince, which was loaded with upgrades to a horrendous degree. It cost so many points to field. I'm trying to remember how many points it was. It might have been close to, was it like 250 or 270? It was something like that. It was ludicrous. It was stupid. There was no point, except if he got into close combat with the enemy, at which point he'd just wreck everything, which is awesome. But didn't always happen. But that's how I've always approached armies, and even up until a few years ago when I constructed my Terminator Strike Force, it was very much done in the same way. I have my Chapter Master who is loaded out with bits of gear, and then a couple of sergeants that I really put a bit of extra effort into, and then the rest of the army. And that kind of feeds into the way I'd viewed Imperial Guard, which was, I'd just never been that interested in them, because in this crazy world of 40k, where you've got the Eldar, you've got the Dark Eldar, you've got these crazy alien races, and you've got this vast history going back, hundreds of thousands of years, when you talk about stuff like the Necrons and things, I always looked at Imperial Guard as being the boring option, to be honest. There's going to be people sitting there going, you fucking what, mate? You what? I just never found them interesting, because I looked at this kind of amazing tapestry of crazy stuff and went, or you could play just the humans with the World War 1/2 era tanks. Sure, that sounds great. It just never clicked. It never resonated with me. It was just like, Why would I play these when I could play the genetically engineered superhuman in armor with a massive chainsaw? Why would I turn down that for just the normal guy? Why would I do that? To me, things like the Space Marines and Sisters of Battle and stuff, they were extraordinary. They were, they were the thing to focus on. They were really pushed, obviously, even back then, and especially now, it's like the stalwart defense of humanity, and they were a step above humanity. Kind of also a step away from humanity, which is something that I never used to appreciate all that well. And it wasn't until a few months ago where I still held that opinion, and I was still like, yeah, I mean, I do like seeing pictures of other people's Imperial Guard armies, but I don't think I'd ever play them myself because they're just human. And I always viewed that as like a not a problem, but when you've got all this extraordinary stuff, humans are extraordinary. So why would you just play an army that consists of a bunch of humans supported by a bunch of tanks? It just didn't seem that interesting to me. Like, the actual character, the actual flavour of the army just seemed kind of dull. And then I read something a few months ago, and I really wish I could remember where I read it, because it literally took what I thought and flipped it on its head, so that I kind of reversed the way I thought about Imperial Guard whilst retaining what I thought about Imperial Guard, which I know is a really weird way to say it, but it's basically this. So previously I viewed things as, things like the Space Marines as extraordinary, and the Imperial Guard as just plain normal humans, not extraordinary, ordinary in the extreme, and therefore not that interesting. However, when you actually look at it, and when you drill down into it, the Space Marines have, they have all these crazy kind of upgrades for their own bodies. They're genetically modified. They have all these organs, all these redundancies. They have all these abilities. They have this colossal strength, and they have the ability to just not feel fear. It's just taken away from them. They don't have that. And it was pointed out that actually, when you look at the kind of big wide world of Warhammer 40,000, someone who has been built to fight without fear and is given the best that the Imperium can offer is at once both extraordinary and not that interesting. When you look at, for instance, a dude who's given a flak jacket, a helmet and a las rifle, and nothing else. Guardsmen don't have any of the conditioning that Space Marines have, except maybe for things like the Death Corps of Krieg. It's a little bit different, but your standard Imperial Guardsman will not have gone through like rigorous psycho conditioning or anything like that. They would not have gone through an insane selection process. They do have training, but it's not Space Marine training, not even slightly, and they still have all of those pesky human emotions left. It's not like they join the Imperial Guard and suddenly, like Space Marines, they feel no fear. Instead, they have to deal with all of the normal human emotions whilst fighting the same enemies that the Space Marines do. When the Space Marines charge a line of demons, they do so knowing that they are the Emperor's warriors and that they are righteous and they feel no fear, and they will go in and they will smite the enemy and so on and so forth. They're so incredibly ingrained with that kind of thing that it kind of stops being a big deal in a way. Yeah, the sacrifice is supreme that Space Marines make. They will literally just lay down their life for the cause without a second thought, which is extraordinary. But at the same time, they don't have any fear of death. They don't have any fear of what lies beyond. It's just a reaction. It's just, this is how we do this. Okay, I will stay behind. I know I'll die, but I will buy you time. You'll escape. That's it. There's no kind of, the doubt or anything like that. There's no sort of second guessing. That is what they do. Imperial Guard, in their completely ordinary nature, in the fact they're just normal people, they're just standard humans, are more extraordinary than Space Marines are, in that they fight the same enemies, they participate in the same battles, and they do it all without the benefit of genetic modification. They do it all without the benefit of power armor. They do it all without the benefit of being able to hold a bolter with one hand and a massive power axe in another hand. They still get it done whilst dealing with the fact that they are still very much just a human. And before, it was the just a human part was boring to me. It was just bland. It was uninteresting. And then I read this really good post somewhere, which as I say, I can't remember where the hell I read it now, and it's really annoying because I did try and find it, that kind of flipped it over and pointed out that, yeah, they are just normal humans. And that's what makes them extraordinary. That's what makes them not boring and not bland. That puts them, way up there in terms of the actual kind of mental strength required to still be an effective force when faced with what the Space Marines face, which the Imperial Guard face all the time. There's plenty of books out there. They've fought pretty much everything at this stage, the Imperial Guard. And they just keep doing it. No modifications, no insane armour, no insane weaponry. They just go in with the flak jacket and the las rifle. They go in with their ancient as fuck looking tanks, and they hold the line for as long as possible whilst dealing with all of the doubt, all of the kind of conflict, all of the fear, and they still get it done. That to me is more extraordinary. That is more interesting now than the idea of someone who cannot feel fear, who can ignore pain, who has got redundant systems for their own body, like 3 lungs and 2 hearts and God knows what else, charging into battle knowing that he'll win because he is who he is. The Imperial Guard don't get the luxury of any of that, and they still fight. It just completely switched it around to the point where I'm now more enthusiastic about getting this Imperial Guard army off the ground than I have been about any project for ages. And on that note, the second part of the video. So, what I am currently working on, because I've been looking at third-party parts to make an Imperial Guard army of my very own and make it my own and kind of design the infantry the way I want them to be. And what I'm intending to do, it's going to take some time, but I will manage it eventually. What I'm intending to do is essentially put together a list of parts and prices and manufacturers so that if you want to make, for instance, someone emailed me a while ago, I apologise for not getting back to you yet, by the way, I've been working on it, how they would go about creating, for instance, female Tanith first and only models. Now, there is no way of doing that with Games Workshop right now, but there may well be a way of doing that by mixing and matching bits of Games Workshop stuff, bits of Victorian miniatures, or whichever other third-party maker I can find. So what I intend to do is take some of the bigger names from the Imperial Guard regiments. I'm going to focus on specifically things like Steel Legion, Tanith, the Mordians, Vostroyan, and I'd probably look at like kind of alternative Catachan as well, just because I think that would be an interesting thing to try and find some alternatives to, because some of those are looking a bit old. And what I want to do is basically make it so that if you want to build a particular Imperial Guard regiment, but you don't want to get the stuff from Games Workshop because it's old, it's in Finecast or whatever, there will be a resource where you can look and you can go, okay, so if I buy the head from there and I buy the legs from there, but I can still use the Cadian body, that will give me this regiment. Or I can use the Cadian legs from that and the arms, but I need to buy the torso and the head from here, there or the other. You'll be able to do that. So I'm working on that at the moment. That'll be its own video, and it'll be actually on a website somewhere. Well, actually, I'll put it on my website, which I should really get back to actually doing something with. And that's what I'm working on. So I don't really know what this video is technically about. Just Imperial Guard in general. I like Imperial Guard, and I want to make it so if you like Imperial Guard, you can make the Imperial Guard army of your dreams as well. I think that's basically the gist of it. A little bit convoluted, a little bit long, but it's fine. If you found that interesting, and if you're interested in the idea of something like, a proper part picker for Imperial Guard, then let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you agree with my assessment of them, or whether you think I've just got it completely wrong. I don't think I have, but maybe you've got extra insight into them that'll make them even better. Who knows? If you like the video, like it, all of that garbage. Click the links if you want to click the links. Don't click them if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.